Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Allison Alford, and I'll be talking about conflict. And the first thing we need to know is what is conflict? Okay, here's one definition for you. And this is from Beebe, and Ivy in Communication Principles for a Lifetime. Conflict is an expressed struggle that occurs between at least two people who are interdependent, who perceive incompatible goals, scarce resources, and experience a climate of competition with the other person. All right, so let's break that down. First, conflict is an expressed struggle. That means that it's something that is coming out, that's being communicated. So conflict is something that we communicate to another person. If it's just something inside, we might call that, turmoil or angst or emotion. But conflict is actually an expression of the emotion. So conflict is communication. Okay, next part. It has to occur between at least two people, but it may occur between three or four or more, right? So when you are having a conflict in the workplace, it could be between your team and another team. It can be between a superior and a junior employee, or a senior and junior employee, or a superior and a supervisee. Or it could be between a union and a company, and there might be two or three company reps and hundreds of union workers and a few union reps. So it doesn't have to just be one-on-one. All right. And the next part of the definition is that conflict is between people who perceive incompatible goals. Okay, so there's a key there: perceive incompatible goals. That means that we believe or think or feel that the other person isn't going to give us what we want, and that we have different motivations or different places that we're trying to get to with our goals. And that creates a conflict because I want what I want and you want what you want. And if I can't get you to do what I want, then I'm at a standstill, a stopping point. All right, so the next part of the definition is that there are scarce resources. Scarce resources means that when we don't have a lot of options, we start to feel panicky about the few limited choices or options we have. So we get more frustrated or express more conflict. We communicate more of this upset when we perceive that there are limited options to get toward our goals. So if I have very few options, and within my options, you and I have a different goal and I can't get to mine, I'm going to communicate conflict to you. And lastly, the last part of the definition is that those involved in conflict experience a climate of competition. And that means that rather than feeling like you can go to the other person and describe your goal and get their help on it, instead you feel like it's either my goal or their goal. My goal or his or her goal will be met, and not both. And that's competition. If we are thinking of a zero sum game, that means there's 100% take available, and I am not sure if I can get 100%, but I want 100% for myself. And so I'm going to have to compete to get what I want. Okay, so that's the basic definition of conflict. But let's move on to talk about what's important about conflict. What do you need to know? Well, conflict is everywhere. Now, our layman's terms tell us that conflict must be the same as an argument, or conflict must be the same as a really painful disagreement, when actually conflict is anything big or small. It doesn't even have to upset you that much. You don't have to be angry in experiencing conflict. It could annoy you, frustrate you, fluster you, or you could look at it and think, oh, here we go again. So it's not necessarily aggressive or violent, but it is inescapable. Do you live with someone? Do you work with people? Then you are going to experience conflict. Do you ever go to the store? you see people out in the world, then you'll experience conflict. And that means that you must deal with conflict. You must learn how to resolve conflict and manage it in order to move smoothly through the world. Okay? And particularly in the workplace, when we want to move more smoothly through the workplace, we can enhance our communication. And one of the big areas that people neglect is working on being a great conflict resolver. And working on that through this material is one of the things that will help you get ahead and stay ahead in business. All right, so what are some of the things that we need to know about conflict resolution? Well, conflict is influenced by power. That probably is at least somewhat obvious to you. If the worker and the boss are having a conflict, the worker may not feel able to fully disclose all of the characteristics of this conflict because of retaliation or fear, or simply can't even get the words out based on the power differences and the many complex emotions that go with that. So that's one type of power, and that's called legitimate power. Okay, and legitimate power means power based on a person's position. So if you are put in charge of the group, you're the team leader, then you have a legitimate power position based upon your title. Okay, so another type of power, though, has to do with what that other person can do for you or can offer you. And so this may be the person in the office who can always get stuff done, get things for you, fulfill your orders, make your invoices get to the top of the pile, or can help you eventually meet the right people to get that promotion. Well, this is reward power. So this person who has the ability to offer rewards has a certain type of power with these rewards at his or her fingertips. Well, conflict with someone who has reward power can be difficult to manage. And on the other hand, perhaps you have reward power, and that gives you some power in this conflict to negotiate. Right when we're negotiating a salary and we know the max budget that we can pay, then we have some reward power, some ability to grant the other person's wishes. On the flip side is the coercive power, and this is based on someone's ability to punish. Now, you can probably see that legitimate power, reward power, and coercive power may exist in the same person if this person is the boss. But you can have coercive power even if you are not in charge, if you are not legitimately in charge. Likewise, you can have a position that says you're in charge, but have no actual power, and everybody in the office knows it. So, a good example of coercive power might be somebody who knows everybody's business and could retaliate and tell others negative or harmful things about you. And this type of power means that you want to not make that other person angry. So, when we're thinking of resolving conflict, we're not only thinking about the topic of the conflict or how I communicate the conflict. There's a lot of complex layers. So we're thinking about how much power do I have to resolve this conflict, or how much power does that person have to resolve this conflict. And when we decide or figure out that this person doesn't have any power to resolve the conflict, well, then we may need to go over their head and get to someone who does have that power. And we have to know how to use our own power for good or ill in order to resolve conflicts for the greater good. And again, get ahead and stay ahead in business. Okay, so lastly, we want to talk about what John Gottman calls the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Okay, and this is a psychologist, and basically these are the four worst things that you can do in a conflict scenario. And a lot of people use these communication techniques, and instead of resolving a conflict, they may make it worse. Okay, let's go over them. So the first one, the first horseman of the apocalypse, is called criticism. So criticism is when we attack our partner's, the person in the conflict partner's personality or character, usually with the intention of trying to make that person seem right or wrong. So we may say, you always, or you never, or you're the type of person who, or what's wrong with you that you, and we set this person into a group of those people, and we criticize. The next horseman is contempt. Contempt is when you are attacking this other person's sense of self with the intention to insult or psychologically abuse him or her. Insults and name calling are two of the big ones. Well, you're just a whiny little baby. That's a very gentle name that I'm using here on this video, but I'm imagining that you know all kinds of things that you've heard said to others around the office, and maybe even around school as well. So name calling, insults, any kind of hostile humor, sarcasm, mockery. Oh, well, you would think that, or so that's what a great way to be helpful there. Thanks so much. These are examples of sarcasm that demonstrate your contempt, meaning I don't even think that you're in my league. You're not even a worthy opponent for me to, to interact with. And our body language and our tone says a lot about this. We may even roll our eyes while someone is talking, and or when they're speaking, and we do a little laugh like that, which isn't, it's not a funny laugh, right? Which might be ah ha 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 ha. Instead, we're showing that we think what that person is saying is truly laughable. Let's move on to the third one, defensiveness. So the third horseman of the apocalypse is defensiveness, and this is when we see ourselves as the victim, and we're trying to ward off a perceived attack by telling everyone what's important to know about ourselves. So we might make excuses. There's whining, or we could use the very common yes, but. So yes, comma, but. Yes, but I didn't have control over that because, followed by an excuse. Okay, this type of defensiveness, this type of strategy refuses to acknowledge or take the responsibility for one's part in a disagreement or in a conflict scenario, and therefore will not lead to conflict resolution. So the last one is stonewalling. All right, and stonewalling, kind of like the name sounds, is building a stone wall between you and someone else. So that's withdrawing from the relationship in order to avoid conflict. And that could be a temporary type of stonewalling, or it could mean cutting someone out of your life completely. So the silent treatment, stony silence, monosyllabic mutterings, yes, no, and often refusal to make eye contact. So refusing to make eye contact with that person, interact with them, speak, communicate, respond to an email, forcing someone else to be an intermediary. This is a type of behavior, that one of these really bad strategies called stonewalling. So if any of those four strategies sound similar to you or sound familiar, then that probably means that you have some work to do. Or perhaps you're hearing these things and you're not doing these, great job, but you're noticing that this is exactly what you encounter in your personal relationships or your business relationships. So let's learn a little bit more through this series about how to handle conflict and move away from these bad behaviors toward good behaviors that will help you resolve conflict in order to get ahead and stay ahead.